please subscribe and don't forget to press the bell icon to get notified whenever we upload a new video.
Well, this is the breaking story. As we told you, the ICICI Bank board has been meeting all day and the news is now official. Chanda Kochhar has been asked to go on indefinite leave, and that is till the probe is completed, and Sandeep Bakhshi will take over as the Managing Director and CEO of ICICI Bank. The board meeting has just concluded and this is the information. Ritu Singh, my colleague who's been tracking this, also joins us. Ritu, you've been trying to get in touch with Sandeep Bakhshi. It is now official. What more do you have with you?
Well, you know, Shireen, it's pretty much official now. The bank has in fact sent a communication that says Mr. Sandeep Bakhshi, who's currently the ICICI Pru Life CEO, has now been appointed as the Wholetime Director and Chief Operating Officer of ICICI Bank. So very important, do remember, he's not the CEO, he's just the COO of the bank. That's how he's been appointed. Also further in the release, he says that Mr. Bakhshi, the bank says, Mr. Bakhshi will be responsible for handling all the businesses and the corporate sector functions at the bank. Further, you know, they've detailed his roles, but, you know, importantly about Chanda Kochhar, this is what the bank has to say. In line with the highest levels of governance and corporate standards, Ms. Chanda Kochhar has decided on her own to go on leave till the completion of the inquiry, as was announced on the 30th May 2018. They're referring to the board notification on that day, which said that the bank would conduct an independent inquiry into the allegations that have been made regarding the Videocon case. It also says that the board has noted Chanda Kochhar's resignation and accepted, this interim leave that she is on. During her period of leave, the COO will be reporting to the board. That is to say that Mr. Bakhshi will closely be working with the board of the bank, which is namely Mr. Kannan, there's Vishakha Mule, Anup Bakhshi, basically all the current staff that is handling various functions. Mr. Bakhshi will closely be working with all of these people. They haven't said anything on appointment of an interim CEO, so at least that thing, that is out of the window. Also, we were hoping to hear something on, Justice Sri Krishna's appointment to head the independent probe. But in fact, I again had a word with Mr. Sri Krishna. We've been able to confirm that it is only last 3 days back, actually, that his appointment was confirmed. But this is the breaking news right now, that Anup Bakhshi will be the CEO and Chanda Kochhar has proceeded on leave. And, while Mr. Sandeep Bakhshi is
Sandeep
Bakhshi is away from ICICI Pru Life.
Anup Bakhshi is also on the board. It's Sandeep Bakhshi. Just 1 second, Ritu. One second. I also want to point out, and I want to read this out for the benefit of all of our viewers. All executive directors on the board of ICICI Bank and the executive management will report to Sandeep Bakhshi. Mr. Bakhshi will report to Ms. Chanda Kochhar, who will continue in her role as Managing Director and CEO of ICICI Bank. So it's very, very clear. Chanda Kochhar continues to be the Managing Director and CEO of ICICI Bank. Sandeep Bakhshi has been appointed as Wholetime Director and Chief Operating Officer. He will report to Chanda Kochhar, and in line with the highest levels of governance and corporate standards, Chanda Kochhar has decided to go on leave till the completion of the inquiry, as announced on the 30th of May. The board has noted and accepted this. During her period of leave, the CEO will report to the board. And of course, Sandeep Bakhshi's bio, Managing Director and CEO of ICICI Prudential since 2010. We've got guests joining us now. Corporate Advisor Prabal Basu Roy, former Executive Director of SEBI J.N. Gupta, and Sriram Subramaniam, Managing Director of InGovern with us. Prabal, let me start by asking you, the board saying that Sandeep Bakhshi will be appointed CEO and Wholetime Director. He will report to Chanda Kochhar, who has voluntarily decided to go on leave till the independent committee completes its probe. Your first reaction?
Well, Shireen, there's a saying in Urdu called "Der aaye durust hai," right? This is exactly that what it is. What should have been obvious course of action is now being done, which is good. This is a bit of a the structure, as you have just announced, is a bit of a gray area, but I think it's giving a favor to Chanda Kochhar, which is fair. I think which should be fair. The main purpose is the investigation should be done openly and transparently, I think, and firmly. And I think that to that extent, Justice Sri Krishna is a credible name. I think if the mandate is ironclad, which we don't know what it is. But if that is ironclad, they should be fine. They should be fine. Yeah. Yeah.
Okay. Prabal, just hang in there. Let me also bring in Mr. J.N. Gupta. Mr. Gupta, so the board saying that Chanda Kochhar will step away from her, will go on indefinite leave till the probe is complete, but Sandeep Bakhshi will report to Chanda Kochhar as and when the probe is complete. He has not been appointed as Managing Director or CEO. He has been appointed as COO and Wholetime Director. In the interim period, he will report to the board. Your first reaction?
See, I will agree with the first speaker that it is there I durust hai. But the issue there is this very simply this complex structure which has been envisaged that all executive directors report to Mr. Bakhshi and Mr. Bakhshi in turn reports to absentee MD and CEO, because very simply the board could not have said that Mrs. Kochhar has been removed, so there was no place. So as long as she is on the board, you cannot create a structure where somebody who is only CEO will report to the board directly. So it has to be through Mrs. Kochhar only. But here it is a case when Mrs. Kochhar is not going to be there till such time the independent inquiry is done. Now the interesting would be that what happens when the inquiry is over and it is not found that Mrs. Kochhar has done anything wrong. That means she continues. In that case, you are creating a problem in the board.
Yeah, she continues. It's very clear.
Till now, till now, the executive directors were reporting to Mrs. Kochhar directly.
Yeah, but Mr. Gupta, even as far as Sandeep Bakhshi's own appointment is concerned, his tenure has been fixed for a period of 5 years. So if the probe says Chanda Kochhar finds Chanda Kochhar not guilty, Chanda Kochhar will continue as MD and CEO, and Sandeep Bakhshi will then continue as CEO.
Yeah. So that is what I'm saying. Now what is happening? Presently the executive directors are reporting to Mrs. Kochhar directly. Now with this new structure there and Mrs. Kochhar not found guilty, you will have a three-tier structure. Executive director will report to Mr. Bakhshi and who will report to Chanda Kochhar. So you have created a one layer in between the executive director and managing director. So how much these executive directors will like this will have to be seen.
Okay, let me also bring in Sriram into the conversation. So it's a little complicated, the structure that has been put in place. A chief operating officer has been brought in. Chanda Kochhar will go on indefinite leave but continues as managing director and CEO till the probe arrives at a conclusion. Sriram, what do you make of this?
I think the structure, obviously, the bank needed a interim CEO, whatever nomenclature be it may be. And so Sandeep Bakhshi is de facto an interim CEO from that perspective. And that be that as may be, but the bank definitely has had lost an opportunity in the past itself. That is, in the past 1 month when Chanda Kochhar went on leave, it should have been put out that she went on, the board had asked her to go on leave. Rather, the bank put out that she had gone on a personal sanctioned leave and pre-scheduled leave. So, and that was a problem, and it was not clear.
Sriram, they're not even saying, but they're not even saying that. They're not even saying that now. They are saying that Chanda Kochhar has decided to go on leave in keeping with the highest standards of corporate governance. They're not saying that the board has asked her to go on leave. They're saying that Chanda has decided to go on leave herself.
Where it shows that the board is a weak board. I mean, if the board were a strong board, they would have put out the message that the board sent her out, asked her to go on leave. The entire messaging is it's a weak board, and the board is not stepping up to the plate to sort of put the CEO in place, whatever it may be. So the entire messaging seems to be completely sending the message that it's a weak board which is acting to the tunes of the CEO, which is a completely wrong message.
No, but one second. Let's play devil's advocate. Mr. Gupta, let me ask you this. You know, the board from the start of this saga has stood by Chanda Kochhar. The board has said, we have done our own assessment, we've done our own review, we find Chanda Kochhar not guilty. And this decision seems to be in keeping with the board's previous decisions. So they're not in any form or fashion contradicting their earlier position. They're saying we've appointed an independent committee headed by Justice Sri Krishna. That probe report will put out whatever its findings are. But the board consistently has maintained its position on Chanda Kochhar, where they believe that Chanda Kochhar is not guilty of any, lapses in corporate governance.
I would partially agree with you in the sense, but I would agree with Shriram also, for the simple reason the board was showed undue haste in giving the first certificate to Mrs. Kochhar that everything is hunky-dory and nothing is wrong. Now then they continued, because having taken the stand, they had no option but to continue with this. The inquiry, independent inquiry, was initiated because it was not voluntary, but it was a force in the sense, because when SEBI has issued a show cause notice, the boards obviously could not have gone to the SEBI and said, look, we have found everything right, because they would have to do something. So that forced the independent inquiry. Now with the independent inquiry coming and a person like Justice Shri Krishna there, one doesn't really know that what were the terms and conditions Mr. Shri Krishna would have put. Probably he could have asked that, look, I want a situation where I don't want the person who is being investigated to be anywhere around the scene. We really do not know. But I would say the board, there is nothing wrong in standing by its CEO, but board showed undue haste and exposed itself that probably they sided with Mrs. Kochhar, rightly or wrongly, we would never know. But as on date, probably they sided with Mrs. Kochhar, rightly or wrongly, we would never know. But as on date, it appeared that they were very hasty.
Okay, let me go across to our other analysts also who are here with us. We've got Mr. H.P. Ranina with us. Mr. Ranina, what do you make of the decision taken by the ICICI Bank board? Chanda Kochhar is now going on indefinite leave till the Justice Sri Krishna committee arrives at a decision. Sandeep Bakhshi has been appointed the COO. Chanda stays on as MD and CEO.
Well, I think this is the right approach, because Chanda should not be around when the probe is going on. And in the interim, Mr. Bakhshi has to be brought in as the operating officer. So I think this is a right decision. I think the board cannot be faulted for what they have done. And obviously, if Chanda Kochhar is given a clean chit by the Sri Krishna committee, then Mr. Bakhshi will continue as the chief operating officer under Mrs. Kochhar.
Yeah.
So I think it's a right approach. I don't see anything wrong with this.
Yeah. Prabal, the point that Mr. Ranina made, and that would make sense. I mean, why would Sandeep Bakhshi, otherwise, who's currently heading ICICI Pru Life, come in as interim CEO? If the committee were tomorrow to find Chanda Kochhar not guilty, she would continue as MD and CEO. What would he gain from this? So, in fact, as Mr. Ranina points out, the board has ensured that Sandeep Bakhshi also comes on board as CEO, and perhaps this is also a way of sort of grooming future talent for that position. I mean, Chanda's term does end in 2019.
See, Shireen, I would like to take this under two parts. The first is the primary issue, which Mr. Gupta also talked about. You know, the board obviously is backing the CEO, etc., faith saver, all that we understand, and that's fine. I mean, that if they want to do it, it's fine. The tacit point here is that after the position which it had taken earlier, it has an excellent opportunity to set things right now, the board, I'm saying, by ensuring a full and independent and fair inquiry, right? While investigations by ED, CBI, etc. are going on. And while those agencies will look at the strict legality of the issues concerned, the board mandate, to my mind, should be one of to focus on the principles of what is ethical governance and what constitutes ethical leadership in its place in contemporary corporate governance. That is what the key issue is. And I hope the mandate is that. Okay. Because otherwise what will happen, it will get diluted. And to that extent, I agree with Mr. Gupta saying that because they are giving this mixed messaging, I don't know how much will and determination is being shown by the board. Of course, Sri Krishna is a very credible face. I'm sure he will do the right thing. So this is one. As regards Sandeep Bakhshi is concerned, yes, I'm sure, he is not come in with his eyes closed. And I'm also sure because he's coming from a different legal entity into this, And obviously the IRDA has to be informed that he is leaving, right? He's leaving ICICI Pru. So there are issues of that nature as well. So this is very, very much going to be a permanent structure. So like it or not, Chanda Kochhar is on her way out. These are just different ways of sort of, placating her or at least giving her a face.
Well, you believe this is a graceful exit for Chanda Kochhar. Amit Tandon, just for the benefit of our viewers, Sandeep Bakhshi, who will take over as CEO of ICICI Bank, his tenure is for 5 years, and ICICI Pru Life will now be headed by NS Kannan. He will take over as Managing Director and CEO of the company. The press release, Amit, doesn't tell us much, and we were expecting that perhaps the press release would have articulated the mandate of the Sri Krishna committee. We are given to understand, we did speak with Mr. Sri Krishna, and he said that the audit committee will help him put this probe committee together, etc. But we were hoping that perhaps today we would have seen more from the board on that. But on balance, what do you make of the decisions taken?
Shireen, I feel that the board has been confused for the last 2 or 3 months, and the current release also seems to suggest that they remain confused about the whole thing. The first is if they say that Sandeep Bakhshi is named the CEO of ICICI Bank and will continue to report to Chanda, who's on leave. I'm not really sure whether she's on leave, if there is someone who's reporting to her, or she's continuing but not coming to office. The second thing I'd want to say is that they announced the fact that they're setting up a committee to look into this whole affair about 3 weeks back. It's taken them 3 weeks to kind of get this whole thing up and running in a period when you would expect the board to think that the sooner they address all the issues and sort out some of the webs which have been kind of formed, or some of the information which is going out into the market, rather than contain it, they've kind of let it fester for a long period of time. So I believe that the board, even at this stage, should have been far clearer about what they're attempting to achieve and how are they doing it. They've kind of been obfuscating the whole affair once more.
Okay. ASV Krishnan also with us. Krishnan, do you agree with what you've heard so far from Amit Tandon and our other guests, or do you believe that at least for now, from a market's perspective, this clarifies matters, at least for now? The stock was up 2.5% today, expecting this development.
Yeah, I mean, many thanks, Shireen. The point, I think, is not just about the designation. I think no matter what nomenclature you give Mr. Bakhshi, at the end of the day, this is probably the kind of middle ground arrangement that could have been practically foreseen. Because unless you have substantial evidence that proves things one way or the other, it's very unlikely that the board can take a decision very contrary to what they did in, say, end of March.
Yeah.
Right? So incrementally, in the absence of any information, I don't think there was any other possible means of retrieving themselves from this. I think this is probably the middle ground that they had to come to terms with. Purely in terms of market reaction.
Gupta, that's the point that I was... Yeah, sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, purely in terms of market reaction, I think the uncertainty or the overhang will continue. I mean, unless you get a clean sheet either way from Justice Sri Krishna committee, saying there is a clean sheet given to the incumbent management team, including the MD, or saying that, look, this is what our findings are. I think that overhang will still remain because this doesn't quite resolve the situation.
It does not resolve the situation. But Mr. Gupta, let me come back to you, because that was the point that I was trying to make as well. And I think Krishnan put it very well, that this is a middle ground arrangement. I mean, it would have been truly unexpected for the board to today have come out and taken a contrary position. I mean, they would have basically indicted themselves, because right through this process, the board has maintained that they stand by Chanda Kochhar. They believe that she has not done anything that was wrong, that the allegations against her don't stand scrutiny or water. And so this is the best that the board could have done, given the fact that that's the position that they've taken so far.
Yeah, I have been saying this because what happened, they had taken initial position and there is no way they can change the position. That is why there is a system of committee. When you are not able to do something, appoint a committee and let somebody else decide for you. And that is what is happening. And the other thing is very clear. I maintain that this is a very clear signal that Chanda Kochhar is on way out. If not now, but that is sure that her term would not be extended after June 19 or whatever her term is coming to end. That is one. The second thing is this, that there was news also that about the chairman will be appointed. Now nothing has come on that. Now that again, I would say that it is the overhang or doubt will still remain. And I would agree with Sriram that board has proved to be very, very weak board, because they have not been able to take a decision either way and show their thing. And as Amit said, that they had taken 3 weeks time to decide who is going to be them. Either you were looking for a comfortable person or you were looking for a really independent person. We do not know. But 3 weeks time is a very long period when there is a swording hanging on your head. So I would say that somehow or other the board has not shown the urgency which was expected from them.
Okay. Amit, let me come back to you now, because there are several issues that continue to look uncertain today. There has been no update from any of the investigative agencies. Neither have Chanda Kochhar nor her husband Deepak Kochhar been summoned by the investigative agencies or questioned by them. Deepak Kochhar's brother was questioned strangely, but Chanda Kochhar and Deepak Kochhar themselves have not been questioned by the investigative agencies. What is even more curious is the position that the government has taken. The government nominee on the board of ICICI Bank is not attending board meetings. So, what do you make of that?
Well, clearly it's pointing to the fact that there is some degree of uncertainty, and the way it works, I presume, is that everyone's looking at the other to kind of take the first step. Clearly, the investigative authorities will take their time till they are clear about what they're going to say. The Ministry of Finance is nominees not attending meetings, or if they are attending meetings, they're not at least commenting on this issue. Or at least what I understand they've said is that law will take its own course in the fullness of time, assuming that there is something wrong. Of course, the board, as of now, is still convinced and is still of the view that Chanda has done nothing wrong, and therefore we will kind of continue with the structure. Having said so, I do want to add the fact that, look, whether not saying, there is no, at this moment, there's nothing to say whether Chanda is guilty or not. But in either case, if she's not guilty, there is nothing wrong if she steps down. We have a precedence of Dr. Naik having done so some time back. And what happens in that case is the investigation is quicker. What I believe is that, look, all this is a distraction, and the sooner we put this behind us, the better it is for the bank. The bank can then resume its operations. So whether Chanda is guilty or not, it makes sense for her to step down, let the investigation be over. She believes, and the board believes, that there is nothing wrong. If that is the case, indeed the case, then she can come back and resume work. But by letting it drag on and letting it fester for some time, they're not helping anyone. The board is not helping itself, and they're not helping ICICI Bank.
Yeah. Okay, Mr. Ranina, would you agree with Amit Tandon that, she should have stepped down, or the board should have asked to step down, and once the probe was complete, if an all clear was given, then she could have been reinstated? Or do you believe that, the matter has already dragged on? She's decided to go on indefinite leave. A committee has now been appointed. Let the committee decide whether there is cause for her to leave or not.
Yeah, I don't think she needs to step down at this stage, because that would amount to, accepting her guilt. If she genuinely feels she has done nothing wrong, but at the same time she wants the bank to come out clean and to have a clear probe into all these affairs, then certainly she should. She's done the right thing of going on leave. I think this is a normal procedure which is followed even in government service, where nobody just walks out. I mean, you step aside and allow the probe to take place. So I think what has happened is the correct thing. There was no need for her to step down unless she actually feels that she has done something wrong. So I think this is the right thing which has happened. She has gone on leave. She has allowed a new person to take over. He will directly report to the board while the investigation is on. And I think if she's comes out clean, then she can certainly come back and then retire with flying colors.
Yes, Sriram, the press release doesn't clarify how long this probe is expected to go on, or by when we can expect the probe to be complete. And it doesn't give us more on what the mandate of the committee is, etc. We are given to understand, and that's, of course, source-based information, that forensic experts, perhaps even international lawyers, because there are, transactions involving Mauritius, etc., which are involved, might be brought in for counsel. But what would the next steps be as far as you're concerned from here on?
Definitely. I think ICICI as a bank has missed out many opportunities to actually reach out to investors. See, this is a situation which demanded frankness, which demanded bold steps from the board, and they have missed out. Even these steps where what is the terms of reference of Justice Sri Krishna, what is the duration or the time frame by which he is expected to put out the report, and whether the report will be put out to the public, etc. That is not clear. And the board or the company, by sort of obfuscating all these matters, is only playing, showing itself in bad light, poor light. And so I think the next step we expect is at least there should be a time-bound manner. And the next step we expect is at least there should be a time-bound manner. And one obviously hopes that the Justice Sri Krishna internal report or investigation will be much faster than what CBI or SEBI can undertake. And hopefully that also brings in forensic experts and enough information outside even the ambit of ICICI. The problem is that the initial statements only touched upon the periphery of ICICI, whereas the transactions have happened outside the periphery of ICICI, and that needs to be clear, that the mandate is not only restricted to the ICICI's periphery, but even outside the periphery of ICICI, and that should be clear.
Yeah, Mr. Gupta, let me ask you, sir, what would you now expect in terms of next steps now that Chanda goes on indefinite leave, the board has appointed Justice Sri Krishna. In terms of next steps, what would you expect?
See, the next step is very clear that 30th June, Mr. Sharma is retiring as a chairman. Now, who will be the new chairman, whether he continues or some new person come, that will be the first thing. Second would be, as Sriram said, that we will have to wait for the report's outcome. And third, we will have to say whether the SEBI would grant them more time or not, because SEBI's timeline has already expired for the response, and they will obviously take a plea that since we have already appointed Justice Sri Krishna Commission, so we will be able to tell you answers for the question that you have raised after the report. The fourth and most important thing will be what form the report will be released to the public at large, and what will be the action points emanating from them. And if at all Mrs. Kochhar is found guilty, then how soon and what action will be taken? And if it is not found guilty, then will the board extend her tenure beyond 2019 or not? That again will be a question mark. So we are still in a very flux stage, but only thing I said that the wisdom came to the board quite late.
Okay, Amit Tandon, final words from you. Next steps, what would you expect? Well, we've lost Amit Tandon there, but let me bring in Mr. Ranina if we still have him with us. Mr. Ranina,
in terms of waiting what is going to happen with regard to the appointment of the chairman, letting the report coming in and seeing what happens there.
Okay, Mr. Ranina, final words from you, sir.
Well, I think we'll have to take it to its logical conclusion. Let the report come. And obviously, if the report is favorable to Chanda Kochhar, she will continue up to that normal age of retirement. Maybe she may even be given 1 more year extension. But if the report is against her, then she will have to step down. And the board will take such action as is necessary based on the report, the findings of the report.
All right, gentlemen, appreciate you joining us here with the big breaking story. The ICICI Bank board saying Chanda Kochhar goes on indefinite leave till there is a conclusion that the Sri Krishna committee arrives at. And in the interim, Sandeep Bakhshi has been appointed as the Chief Operating Officer. Chanda Kochhar remains Managing Director and CEO until the committee gives its recommendations. Sandeep Bakhshi, for a period of 5 years, has been appointed as the Chief Operating Officer. Time for us to head into a break. Don't go anywhere. We return with more news and analysis.